This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Big news story surfaced, and I don't know if you're aware of it or not. The Vatican has come out with a new document, the Dicastery on the Doctrine of Faith. They tend to address a lot of these social issues that we're facing today, and they came out with a new document called Infinite Dignity, or Dignitas Infinita. Those are the first two words from the document that they issued today. And the document was written by the Dicastery, approved by Pope Francis, of course. And it emphasized the infinite dignity of every human person. It's something that's inviolable, it's irremovable, it's irreplaceable, it's irrevocable, and it's given us by God. And it applies to you no matter what condition you might find yourself in, period. It addresses poverty. It addresses the plight of migrants and modern challenges to the concept of dignity. I think the timing for this document could not be better, right? Talk about the spectrum of things it covers, even cyberbullying. So you might want to check it out, all right? But of course, those aren't the parts that anyone's really talking about. What you're going to hear about, and I'm sure this will pop up on your social media feeds, or maybe you might even hear it in the news somewhere, instead of those issues I just addressed, what's going to be focused on are the last two paragraphs where the document addresses the hot-button sexual issues of surrogacy and gender theory, transgenderism, abortion. Those are the issues that are going to get everybody talking. So the document is I think the consternation of the modern world, very clear on these issues. I'm delighted by what came out. The New York Times was reporting earlier today, there's the executive director of the New Ways Ministries, a guy named Francis DiBernardo, and he says, this is what the Times reported, which is, by the way, that group, I don't want to get you too confused, New Way Ministries, it's a heretical organization that has been frequently denounced by the USCCB, by our United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. So I want to put that in context. He says, the Vatican is again supporting and propagating ideas that lead to real physical harm to transgenders and to non-binary and other LGBTQ plus people. He never says how it's going to happen. Again, that's the New York Times. So when you read these type of papers, if it doesn't sound right, if you think the church wouldn't do that, trust your judgment, right? If it doesn't pass the sniff test, there's probably a reason. The Times called it. Here's what the New York Times says. That paper's really lost its credibility in my eyes. The Times calls it a clear setback for LGBTQ plus people and their supporters. Why is it a setback? Because you don't understand what the church teaches on this, why it comes out of a place of love and truth. The Washington Post couldn't get over the fact, and look, I'll quote again what they said. Here, they said, quote, the document also exalts heterosexuality. The document exalts heterosexuality. And they cited a section that says this, in the male-female couple, this difference achieves the most marvelous of reciprocities. It thus becomes the source of that miracle that never ceases to surprise us, the arrival of new human beings in the world. Hello. What's wrong with that? That's the way it has been since the beginning of time. How does that exalt heterosexuality? That's a fundamental truth. So faithful Catholic commenters are pointing out really that a balance was struck in the document, making sure that Catholics understand that, look, we have to support the dignity of every human person. At the same time, there are actions that always and everywhere offend dignity. They offend the dignity of the human person. So I thought what we could do today is take a look at this document. You're going to read about it in places like the Times and other places, maybe even social media. I want you to be in the know. I want you to be on the right side of what came out so you can speak clearly to it and be cloaked in the truth. So I've invited Father Robert Gahl, who's the director of the Masters in Ecclesial Administration and Management at the Bush School of Business at Catholic University of America. Father, always good to have you here. Thank you again.
It's great to be with you, Drew, especially on this wonderful feast day, the Solemnity of the Annunciation, in which we celebrate the Incarnation.
Yeah.
And this is so relevant to this very topic.
No, it really is.
Yes.
Why don't you draw that connection? Why don't you maybe elucidate that a little further?
Sure. This Dignitas Infinita, Infinite Dignity, this new document that Pope Francis has approved, that was prepared by the Dicastery for Doctrine of the Faith. makes it really clear of the objective order of dignity that is in every human being. And it also makes clear that every human being is either male or female, man or woman. And this is true, of course, from even before our birth up until the end of our lives, until natural death. And so what's really important here is that there are ideologies that are really heresies that are spreading today, according to which you are what you think you are, rather than you are what you really are, which is that you are a body, a living body. And this, we celebrate this today because God became man. He has, not even has, he is a living body. Jesus is a man. And to be a man is to be a living body, which every time we receive Holy Communion, every time we pray before the tabernacle, we recognize that Jesus is really present, which means God and man is really present. But unfortunately, some of these ideologies are promoting this idea that if you could be whatever you kind of see yourself as, you'd like to be. And clearly, in some of these cases, it really not only borders upon, but it constitutes mental illness. There are people like saying that they're different kind of animals.
Yeah,
there are people who actually consider themselves to have multiple identities. It's called multiple identity disorder, but there are people who are presenting as a kind of fashion statement on TikTok today, as though they can be at the same time multiple individuals. And all of this is without their being according to their body. So what the Vatican, what Pope Francis is affirming here is the dignity of our bodies. And this is certainly from womb to tomb, that our bodies have dignity and that the church is really the stalwart defender of human dignity, including especially, and Pope Francis makes especially clear in this document, especially those who are weak and vulnerable. And so those includes, of course, those who are in the womb, those who are poor, those who are suffering some kind of trafficking or slavery. And he also speaks with great compassion towards those who are migrants, especially those who are fleeing injustice and persecution, and how they should be welcomed and taken care of while we recognize their human dignity.
Yeah. So let's talk about, there's a lot in it, and we only have a few minutes to talk, but I'd like to break some of it down. And some of the hot button or some of the key ones a lot of people are going to maybe misconstrue or be upset about. But before we get to that, it's just like a foundation. How does the document define human dignity? I mean, why is it considered inalienable? I love it. Our founding fathers also used that word inalienable, that we all have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's the church saying about the inalienable? How does it define human dignity and why it's considered inalienable?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's interesting about the document, there seems to be an appeal to, let's say, what's called Anglophone or English language jurisprudence and political tradition. With that expression you said of inalienable, which we have in the Declaration of Independence. There's also an explicit reference to the Magna Carta, which came out of England and represented fundamental human rights. So it considers human dignity primarily rooted in the fact that we are created by God in his image and in his likeness. And it affirms that this can be recognized without appealing to faith, simply by human reason. And we can recognize this because the human being has a capability to come to know potentially everything, that there is no limit as to what we can know and to love. Wow. And so the document uses some philosophical considerations regarding this inherent capacity that we have for the infinite, such that this is in our souls. The document speaks very richly about and robustly about the body-soul composite and how both are constitutive of the human being, and that our being, having a spiritual soul, opens us up to the infinite. And the soul gives life to the body, such that the body is ensouled and is alive. And so we are a body-soul composite that is open to the infinite. And therefore, we are the likeness of God within material creation. And so this, of course, entails that parents have a responsibility for education, which is also prominent in the document, that we ought to foster this capacity for the infinite in every human being, insofar as they're capable. And so it considers, for instance, those who are asleep or those who are terminally ill and are unconscious or comatose, they too share in this infinite human dignity on account of their inherent nature. So everyone must be respected for being an image of God.
Father, let's start with one of the more controversial aspects of the document, and that deals with the LGBTQ plus community and transgender, non-binary individuals. What does the church say about this? This seems to have really gripped, I know, this country, if not the world, by storm. I've never seen transgenderism be so embraced, and so many people claiming to be, binary and as or another gender. How does the church look at it? How are we to treat somebody who feels that way, believes that, and maybe you can unpack all that for us now.
Sure, right. I think it's a really important issue because it's not just a passing fad. This, although it can seem like a fad, all these kind of it's been considered this new term, rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is meant to encapsulate this idea that we see in some schools, especially among girls, sadly, like 12 years old or even younger, that they can be this contagion through their friendship and society, and especially ignited, catalyzed by the internet, that they can suddenly start thinking that, oh, well, maybe I should be a boy. And this leads to this kind of transgenderism or sex change, where they think, oh, maybe I should block my puberty, take some drugs, and even undergo some kind of sex change surgery. And sadly, some people have inflicted themselves with this kind of mutilation, really. And so the document is really clear about this, how we should consider that every individual human being is made in the image of God. And it quotes from St. Irenaeus, great doctor of the church, who says that the human being is the glory of God indeed. And he says, man, living man, the life of man consists in the vision of God, so that our perfection, our completion is in contemplating God. This is relevant to this whole gender craze because the gender craze is an anthropological heresy. It denies the very reality of the human being, of man and woman. And Drew, you quoted the Washington Post quoting from the Pope, actually saying beautiful things about marriage and the love between a man and a woman and how it's fruitful. Right. And it leads to new life, and how beautiful that is. We see it among humanity and also other living beings. And this is a manifestation of the relationship that is most ultimately in God, and then is manifested in the Blessed Trinity, is manifested within human beings, within marriage and love for one another. So according to this idea, this deep understanding of human dignity that Pope Francis proposes here, our openness to infinity is expressed through the gift of love and through the gift of ourselves, and by, above all, recognizing that our own being, we haven't created ourselves. Our own being is a gift, and that we have been created by God. And therefore, by honoring our own selves and our bodies, we are honoring God, who is the creator, and of course our parents. And by honoring our parents, we honor God.
Some final thoughts, the practical steps of Dignitas Infinita in terms of what it suggests for you, for me, for those who are listening, for even communities to uphold, protect the dignity of human life. Final thoughts on the document. Maybe you can suggest how people can read it and understand it.
Two things that are, one that is more political and another one is very practical and personal, I think, for all of us. So the more political one has to do with surrogacy. Mm-hmm. And Pope Francis, once again, the second time in just a few months, has denounced very strongly surrogate motherhood, saying how it's an offense against the dignity of the woman and also of the child. And here there's certainly a possibility for restricting that in law. In many states in the U.S., it's like Wild West, that you can do just any kind of surrogacy, which is really a buying and selling of human beings, certainly the 9 months in which the woman would carry the baby to term. And then she's signing away a contract that that child, who is in some way her child, that in no way does it belong to her afterwards. Yeah. Oftentimes, women in developing countries are being taken advantage of this way. And so through law, through other mechanisms, we can try to restrict the amount of that surrogacy and thereby defend human dignity. Another area that's more personal has to do with education. Pope Francis is really emphasizing how, because everyone is ordered towards infinite dignity in God by educating children to grow in their intellectual life, but also in their spiritual life.
Father, I got to hold it right there. I'll tell you what, if you want to read the document, we put it up on our social media. Just go to the Drew Mariani Facebook page or to our Twitter account. You can check it out for yourself. My thanks to Father Gahl. Hey, like what you just heard? Then share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.